We're looking at price elasticity or demand values, where if we go back, we talked about that how the minus sign in the price elasticity or demand is just because of the law of demand. When we're interpreting the value, we just ignore the minus sign and look at the absolute value, which is the number itself, ignoring the sign. And here we talked about in absolute terms, it takes values from zero to all the way to positive infinity. And then based on this, we talked about how can we characterize products according to their price elasticity or demand. We then talked about price elastic demand. We now want to talk about price inelastic demand. Now, when you were talking about price elastic demand, we said the value of price elasticity or demand in absolute terms is greater than 1. When we talk about price inelastic demand, the value of price elasticity or demand in absolute terms is between 0 and 1. So if it's greater than 1, we say it's elastic demand. When it's less than 1, we say it's inelastic demand. And remember, we're talking about the number itself, ignoring the sign. So the interpretation of this is that the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price. In elastic demand, it's the exact opposite. The percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. That is why we said it's elastic, because we're talking about how when price changes, how much quantity demanded stretches. If it stretches a lot like a rubber band, we say it's elastic demand. But in the case of price inelastic demand, when price changes, quantity demanded does not stretch by a lot. So we say it's inelastic demand, right? Elastic means something that can stretch easily. So in this case, when price changes, quantity demanded does not stretch by a lot. So we say it's inelastic demand, right? So in this case, the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price. So say price decreases by 5%. If this was elastic demand, we said quantity demanded would increase by more than 5%, because percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price. Say it increases by 15%. But when you're looking at an inelastic demand, if price decreases by 5%, the percentage increase in quantity demanded is less than 5%, say it's just 1%. And the closer to zero it is, the more inelastic demand is. So we know, okay, if a good has price inelastic demand, the value of its PD is less than 1. And the closer it is to zero, the more inelastic demand is, the more unresponsive quantity demanded is to change in its price. And we were talking about the demand curve. For a good with price elastic demand, we said the demand curve is relatively flat because a given change in price results in a much larger change in quantity demanded. For a good with price inelastic demand, its demand curve is relatively steep because now a given change in price results in a much smaller change in quantity demanded, right? So if price say falls by this much, the increase in quantity demanded is less, right? It responds less significantly to changes in price. So it's important to know the more elastic the demand is, more flatter the demand curve is, as in figure 2. The more inelastic the demand is, the more steeper the demand curve is. Because when price falls with inelastic demand, the increase in the quantity demanded does not increase much, and that produces a more steeper demand curve. But when in the case of elastic demand, when we have the same fall in price, the increase in quantity demanded is a lot more, and we have a flatter demand. So the more elastic the demand, the more flatter the demand curve, more inelastic the demand, the more steeper the demand curve. In both cases, we can see that price falls by the same amount. Here, quantity demanded does not increase by much. We have a steeper demand curve. Here, quantity demanded increases by a lot. We have a flatter demand curve. So one implication of this is we can quickly judge elasticity of good by looking at how steep the demand curve is. If we have two goods, one has a more steeper demand curve, this means that it has more inelastic demand. If one good has more flatter demand curve, that means it has more elastic demand. So by just looking at the demand curve, by comparing the demand curve of two commodities, we can tell from there which has more elastic demand and which has more inelastic demand. Because the demand curve for a good with more elastic demand is relatively flat, and the demand curve for a good with more inelastic demand is relatively steep. So when we compare price elastic and price inelastic demand, just remember, when we talk about elastic means something that can stretch, right? That's what we're talking about here. So we're asking that when price changes, how much does quantity demanded stretch? If it stretches by a lot, which means the percentage change in quantity demanded is more than the percentage change in price, we say the good has elastic demand. with a flatter demand curve. But if quantity demanded does not stretch much in response to change in price, we say the commodity has inelastic demand, right? Quantity demanded is not stretching a lot in response to change in price. And so in that case, percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in price. So we have inelastic demand, and a commodity with inelastic demand has relatively steep demand.